The Cry Beneath the Desert Moon. The year was 1872, and the endless sands of the Sonoran Desert stretched farther than any eye could see. By day, the land burned beneath a merciless sun. By night, it became a cold kingdom of shadows and silence. Travelers feared the desert, for many entered, but not all returned. Across that lonely wilderness crawled a broken wagon pulled by a tired mule. Its wheels groaned over the rocks, and every turn seemed to be its last. Sitting inside was a young woman named Clara May. Dust covered her dress, her lips were cracked, and pain twisted across her face like lightning across a storm sky. She was alone. At just 19 years old, Clara carried a child nearly ready to be born. Her husband, Thomas, had died 2 months earlier of fever in a mining camp. With nowhere else to go, Clara had packed their few belongings and started west, hoping to reach a town where distant relatives might take her in. But hope was a fragile thing in the desert. The wagon axle had cracked that morning. Her water had nearly run dry. And now the pains in her belly came stronger and closer together. Clara held the wagon side and cried out, "Please, not here, not now." The mule stopped as if it too had lost the will to move. Clara climbed down carefully, her legs trembling. Another pain struck like a knife. She fell to her knees in the sand. The desert wind answered with silence. Miles away, a rancher named Eli Mercer rode home beneath the setting sun. Eli was a broad-shouldered man of 35 with weathered hands and quiet eyes. He had spent years alone on his cattle ranch after losing his wife and infant daughter during childbirth long ago. Since that day, Eli trusted hard work more than people. The land made sense. Grief did not. His horse, Ranger, suddenly snorted and refused the trail ahead. "What is it, boy?" Then Eli heard it. A cry. Weak. Human. Desperate. He spurred Ranger toward the sound and crested a ridge. Below, near a crippled wagon, a woman knelt in the sand clutching her stomach. Eli raced down the slope. "Miss." Clara looked up through tears. "Help me." He slid from the saddle and caught her as another pain bent her nearly double. "How far apart?" she gasped. "Minutes. Maybe less." Eli's heart froze. Memories stabbed through him. His wife screaming, the helplessness, the blood. But he forced himself steady. "You're not dying here," he said firmly. "Not tonight." He lifted her gently and carried her to Ranger. Then he tied the broken wagon's mule behind them and rode hard toward his ranch. Night had fallen by the time they arrived. Eli's ranch house stood alone against the moonlight, simple and sturdy with a barn nearby. He carried Clara inside and laid her on the bed. "I ain't no doctor," he admitted, stoking the fire, "but old Mrs. Donnelly taught me enough after years back." Clara gripped the blankets. "Please don't leave me." "I won't." Another contraction seized her. Eli boiled water, tore clean cloth, and tried to remember everything he'd once wished never to remember. Outside, coyotes howled. Inside, life fought to enter the world. Hours dragged like years. Clara screamed, wept, cursed, prayed. Eli held her hand when she begged, turned away when modesty asked, and spoke steady words though fear thundered in his chest. "You're stronger than you know." "I can't." "Yes, you can." Near midnight, the child crowned. "One more push." Clara cried out with every ounce of strength left in her soul. Then suddenly, a baby's cry filled the room. Sharp, tiny, miraculous. Eli stood stunned as he held the slippery newborn wrapped in cloth. A girl, red-faced and furious at being born. Clara sobbed with relief. "My baby." He laid the child in her arms. "She's beautiful," Eli said softly. Clara kissed the tiny forehead. "Her name is Rose." For the first time in 15 years, Eli Mercer smiled without pain. Morning light spilled across the desert gold and clean. Clara slept while baby Rose rested beside her. Eli sat on the porch, staring at the sunrise. Something inside him had shifted. The cry of that child had broken open a locked room in his heart. He had spent years living like a ghost, speaking little, feeling less. But now laughter, small and unexpected, echoed inside the house. It frightened him, and it warmed him. Clara stayed to recover. Days turned into a week. She learned Eli's quiet habits. Coffee before dawn, checking fences at sunrise, feeding chickens before breakfast. He learned that Clara sang softly while rocking Rose, that she was stubborn as iron, and that grief had not hardened her kindness. One evening she found a tiny grave beneath an oak tree behind the house. A weathered wooden cross. Anna Mercer. Little Grace. Clara stood silently until Eli came behind her. My wife, he said. And our daughter. Both gone the same day. I'm sorry. He nodded once. After that, I buried more than them. Clara looked at him. Maybe not all of it. He had no answer. Word spread slowly across the frontier that Eli Mercer had taken in a widow and newborn. Most folks were curious. Some whispered. Then trouble arrived. 3 men rode in one dusty afternoon led by Wade Cutter, a gambler and drifter with a smile like a snake. He dismounted slowly. Heard there's a widow here traveling alone. Clara stepped onto the porch, Rose in her arms. Wade tipped his hat. Ma'am, your late husband owed me money. That's a lie, Clara said. Wade shrugged. Maybe, but debt passes to kin. Lucky for you, I accept payment in many forms. Eli came from the barn carrying a shovel. She ain't yours to trouble. Wade grinned. And who'll stop me? Eli planted the shovel in the dirt. A man with land to bury fools. The other riders laughed nervously. Wade's smile faded. This ain't over. It is if you ride now. For a long moment, death balanced in the air. Then Wade spat and mounted up. Sooner or later, rancher. They rode off. Clara trembled. He'll come back. Eli nodded. Then we'll be ready. That night Clara asked, why help me? Truly. Eli stared into the fire. Because years ago, no one came when I needed help. Because I know what loneliness costs. Because Rose deserves better than this world usually gives. Clara's eyes filled. You're a good man, Eli. He shook his head. No, just trying to become one. Weeks passed. Rose grew stronger. Her tiny fingers curled around Eli's thumb each morning, and each time he acted annoyed though everyone knew better. He built Clara a cradle from cedar wood. He repaired her wagon though no one mentioned leaving. He laughed more, and Clara began watching him when she thought he did not notice. One stormy night Wade Cutter returned with 4 men. They cut the fence and drove cattle wild to draw Eli outside. Gunshots shattered the dark. Eli shoved Clara and Rose beneath the bed. Stay there. He grabbed his rifle and stepped into the rain. Lightning split the sky. One rider charged from the barn. Eli fired. The man tumbled. Another rushed from the side porch. Eli struck him with the rifle stock. Wade kicked open the door and seized Clara by the arm. Come on, widow, Rose screamed. Clara clawed Wade's face. He cursed and raised his pistol. Then Eli appeared in the doorway, bleeding from the forehead. Let her go. Wade aimed at him. Drop it. Eli lowered the rifle. Wade smirked. Then Clara stomped his boot heel with all her strength. Wade flinched. Eli lunged. The gun fired into the ceiling. They crashed through the table. Wade reached for a knife. Eli caught his wrist and slammed it against the floor until the blade fell. Then he held Wade still with one massive hand. Ride away, Eli growled, or leave in a box. Wade saw murder in the rancher's eyes and believed it. He scrambled up and fled into the rain with his remaining men. Silence returned except for Rose crying. Eli sank to one knee, exhausted. Clara ran to him. You're hurt, only where it counts least. She touched the blood on his brow, then kissed him before fear could stop her. Both stared in surprise. Rose hiccuped from the bed. They laughed. Spring came to the Sonoran Desert in small miracles, green shoots after rain, birdsong at dawn, wildflowers in dry places. Clara's wagon stood ready. At breakfast she said quietly, I should leave soon. My relatives may still be waiting. Eli's hand tightened on his cup. Of course, but his voice was hollow. She nodded sadly. That afternoon she packed. At sunset she found Eli repairing a gate that needed no repair. I don't want to go, she said. He kept hammering. Then don't. You never asked me to stay. He stopped. I buried everyone I loved, he said without turning. I didn't know if I had the right to ask for more. She stepped closer. You do. He faced her slowly. And Rose, he whispered. Clara smiled. She already chose. She stops crying when you hold her. Eli laughed through sudden tears. Then he gathered mother and child into his arms. The desert wind moved gently through the grass. Months later, neighbors gathered under lantern light outside the ranch house. There was music, high, and enough gossip to feed a county. A preacher stood smiling as Clara wore a simple white dress sewn by local women. Rose slept in a basket nearby. Eli Mercer, clean-shaven and nervous as a schoolboy, waited beneath an oak tree. The same oak that once shaded graves. Now it shaded beginnings. When Clara reached him, he whispered, "You sure about this?" She squeezed his hand. "I crossed a desert, I'm sure." They were married under stars bright enough to bless anyone. Years passed. The ranch prospered. Laughter replaced silence. More children followed. 2 boys and another girl. Rose grew fierce and clever, ruling her brothers with cheerful tyranny. Travelers often stopped there for water and shelter. None were turned away, and if a lost soul ever asked why the ranch gate bore the words Mercy House, Eli would glance toward Clara and say, "Because one night Mercy cried out in the desert, and I was lucky enough to hear it." Far beyond the fence line, the sand still stretched endless and harsh beneath the sun. But on one patch of earth, love had made the wilderness bloom.